There's this, well, good afternoon. It's Shawn C, aka the Black Eric Foreman, coming at you today with a video that's been on my mind for a while. There's this thing or this concept that people have to generally not critique an artist that the public accepts as lyrically subpar just because they aren't trying to be the next Tupac, Nas, or Biggie. And I guess you could say I'm kind of sick of it, and I think the argument in defense of these artists just simply isn't justified. In an attempt to get people who make the kind of videos I make, any kind of review or opinionated video, in an attempt to silence and or censor those kinds of creators, what people will do is say, oh, so-and-so isn't trying to be Tupac, Biggie, Nas, J. Cole, Kendrick Lamar. He's not trying to be lyrical. He's not trying to be conceptual. So why are you judging him like this? I understand not all music is supposed to be consumed the same way, and that same rule of thumb goes with artists, okay? Artists you have a history with, who you acknowledge make a certain style of music, you shouldn't all of a sudden expect them to start doing this when forever they've been doing this. So I completely understand the concept that is in place in defense of those artists. I don't expect lyrics from Future, just like I don't expect mumble rap from Kendrick. However, that style only applies to artists that are bad, in my opinion. Nobody gives Kendrick the benefit of the doubt for making boring music whenever he came out with To Pimp a Butterfly. A lot of people liked that project. A lot of people loved it. It was a lot of people's favorite. A lot of people think it's a classic now. Whatever. But a bunch of the fans who are generally more accepting of turn-up rap, they didn't give those same arguments for Kendrick. Like, Kendrick doesn't make this kind of music, so why are you critiquing it this way? They only use that logic in defense of one style of rap and not the other. And that will be my biggest issue or problem with it, is that it's not fair. Why should I have to accept your defense of Lil Pump just because he's not lyrically gifted? I'm not judging him as the next Pac or as the next Nas or anything like that. I completely understand people's frustration with critique like that. But when do you get to the point where you stop defending what is and just take a look at it objectively and say, you know what, I like this guy, but he kind of trash? But this argument is used all the time in defense of artists who the majority label as trash. Now, I'm really sensitive with this word. I don't want to like throw it around because I know it's a really sticky stigma to get away from. Once you're labeled as trash, it's really difficult. It's very hard to come away from that label after the general public tends to label you that way. That's why it's so hard for people like Big Shawn to escape the label of being corny. Now, you're not helping it by delivering certain kinds of bars, but even if he was good, he'd have to work 10 times harder than the next guy just to prove to the general public that he isn't corny. Just like J. Cole's verse would have to be 10 times better than Kendrick's just for people to say it's good, whereas the average Kendrick verse just goes by without any kind of criticism. So I don't want to label artists as trash because that's a really negative stigma. It's something that you don't want to be labeled as because it's really hard to come away from. I'm not keen on putting people under that label, with the exception of a few artists. So when I think about people addressing me and defending like Lil Pump or Lil Yachty, asking me what I expect, I don't expect a thing. I don't want anything from these artists. But that doesn't mean that just because I've accepted the fact that they fall short in these categories that I'm not supposed to give them a proper critique. I'm not supposed to rate them on a scale that I would rate any other rapper just because they fall short. Your college professor isn't going to accept the fact that you don't write good essays and give you an A or give you a passing grade. Oh, you have to work hard to become better. You don't just immediately skate by criticism because the general public accepts the fact that you fall short in these areas. And the thing that really upsets me even more about these artists or their fans in defense of them is the fact that these fans will intentionally take the artists who they know are not good, and then they'll go and compare them to the top of the line or the most credible source of real rap, which most people would define as groups like NWA, Mobb Deep, Outkast. You got artists like Tupac, Biggie, Nas, just to eliminate any kind of critique of these dudes, and that to me is annoying as fuck. So are we gonna give a pass to everything that LeVar Ball does in the NBA just because we've accepted the fact that he's not as good as Michael Jordan? Like, should he just stop getting better at this point because people have accepted the fact that he'll never be on Michael Jordan's level? No. Is that going to stop these sports analysts from judging him as an NBA player? No. And for you to expect it to is unrealistic and childish as fuck. You aren't doing these artists any favor by giving them such an easy handicap. You're literally just telling me, or anybody else who looks at the music the same way I do, they don't know any better. The craziest thing about these artists is I think they actually know that they're under the protection of the blanket blanket that's given to them by their fan base. So basically what I mean is Lil Dicky would probably never come out with a Brain EP if he didn't know that he would get protection from his actual fan base. Like, he didn't know, as long as I come out with a project as a comedian, my fan base will accept it as a comedic project when it's really not even funny. Then what I'll do is, under this protective shield, under this blanket that they've given me, what I'll do next is put a serious song at the end, and then if they don't like it, use the fact that they're going to use the fact that I'm a comedian against the people who are going to criticize my project, to say, oh, he's not really trying, he's just a comedy artist. When you're underneath a blanket that's constantly given to you by a fan base, you are never going to evolve or see anything wrong in your artistry. People give the same excuse to Lil Uzi, people give the same excuse to Lil Yachty. It doesn't matter, okay? You can be lyrically subpar. There's really no issue with that, okay? Nobody's harassing Lil Yachty over the fact that he doesn't have bars. And there are some artists that I will agree with a ton of you that you go to for certain purposes and others you stay away from. But when the artist you're going to that's supposed to fulfill that purpose doesn't fulfill it, what do? Do you keep giving him that protective blanket, or do you say, no, this was trash? People get it completely confused. Lil B was a genius, okay? He was ahead of his time. He knew that this type of thinking would be accepted, and he made fun of it way beforehand. And I am not a Lil B fan, but I can appreciate what he did. I mean, are we gonna start accepting piss from people and telling them, oh, it's okay because you meant to piss in this cup and I'm just supposed to drink it? Are we all of a sudden gonna start accepting undercooked steaks from 5-star restaurants because we knew what they were going for? You're gonna eat this steak, get sick, and die because you didn't want to tell them, hey, go take my steak back and cook it right. You're gonna not sue a hospital for giving you a misdiagnosis? Oh, nah, dog, it's okay. I just had a common cold. You just misdiagnosed me with cancer. It's all good. At what point do you understand or accept the fact that when you go to someone for something and they don't fulfill that purpose, either you criticize what it is that they're doing wrong or you go to someone else? You don't stay there and keep getting the same treatment. Look, I am 21 years old, okay? I'm going on 22 in about a little over a month. I've come to the conclusion that when you want something done right, you go to the person who's able to do that thing right. You're all reviewers, okay? You're all I don't want to have this conversation or make it seem like I'm above you or that you're beneath me. I don't want to give this thought process to you that, oh, Dead in Hip Hop or Fantano or any other big reviewer out there is above you, because technically you're all reviewers. You give your thought process, you give your opinion, you give how you truly feel about a project in the Twitter mentions, on social media, in the YouTube comments. You tell people how you feel all the time. Do not silence yourself and allow trash to keep filtering through just because you don't want to be under scrutiny when the time is gonna come when you're gonna have to say something was poorly executed, okay? This guy was going for a comedy album and he tried to put a fucking try-hard song on here. Want to know how I know it was a wannabe hard song? Because he put The Game on it. He had to pay for that game feature, okay? He put The Game on the song to legitimize it, to make it harder than it would have been had it just been Lil Dicky the whole time. And what he does is he allows Game to fit into the smallest portion of the song, okay? Game was snapping. His subject matter, really shaky, but he was still snapping. His flow, very entertaining. But Lil Dicky, on the other hand, what does he do? He goes and he says, yo, this is my opportunity to keep myself under this blanket that I know the fans are gonna give me. Rap my ass off. I'm gonna try my heart out. I'm gonna give a verse before the game, and I'm gonna give a verse after the game. And if they don't like it, they can either blame it on the fact that this is an alter ego that I'm using in order to do something that I've always wanted to do, or I can just keep myself under this blanket of being a comedian, a comedy rapper, a special needs rapper. There's no doubt in my mind that a lot of these artists that some of you guys give passes to can become better. That's why they should be criticized. Listen, man, there's nothing wrong with a Lil Pump. There's nothing wrong with a Lil Yachty. There's nothing nothing long. Well, some of these artists are pretty short. I don't have to say pause on that though, because I wasn't talking about that, so no pause. Nothing wrong with a Lil Uzi Vert, nothing wrong with a Kodak Black, nothing wrong with 21 Savage. Don't you feel like it's a bigger insult? And I'm not talking to the fan base of people who really enjoy lyrical rap. I'm talking about, you know, the people who like the mumble rappers, the people who've accepted the fact that what they're listening to holds no substance, it has no value. I'm talking to you guys. Don't you think it's a little bit to the artist's detriment to give them a pass on any and everything just because you've acknowledged the fact that they're never going to be on this level. Maybe part of the reason that they will never be on that level is because they don't have enough people who are saying, hey, I believe you could make better music, and even if I didn't, you need to make some. I mean, at this point, I've accepted the fact that Lil Yachty is not going to get any better. That does not mean that I'm not going to give my honest opinion of his music simply because I've accepted the fact that he's not a good rapper. Same thing with Playboi Carti. It all comes down to the fans and their level of enjoyment and what they want out of music. Because if it's up to me, I'm not going to sit up here and not give my honest response or opinion to someone's music just to avoid hate or to avoid any kind of stigma on myself. Like I said, my biggest issue with that whole argument is the fact that it's not fair because it's not used both ways. People don't defend lyrical rap from people who are very conceptual or viewed as such in the industry in defense of their music, when other artists or other people in the industry or other fans say these types of artists' music is boring, but the argument goes for substanceless rap. I mean, just call a spade a spade. It is what it is. You don't have to stop listening to the artists just because most people view them as trash or view them as generic. In short, it's fine if you love listening to these kinds of artists. There's no problem with it. You can continue doing so. Nobody's telling you not to, but understand when people say or have any kind of critique for these artists, just because you accept the fact that so-and-so is lyrically subpar, or you accept the fact that XOXO or whoever else, whatever you want to label them as, just because you accept the fact that these artists don't have a concept, or the music has no substance, or they're really not talking about anything, or they mumble a lot, doesn't mean everybody is going to just be so willing to accept that without giving an honest opinion of what it is that they're listening to. And you shouldn't try to censor these folks from giving their honest opinion and upholding that in their videos, in their tweets, in their social media, just to protect some of your favorite rappers from any kind of criticism. That's pretty much all I wanted to get off my chest. It's just an annoying argument. I don't feel it's necessary. We don't need it. And that's how I'm feeling. Shawn C. I'm signing off. I'm logging off, and I'll see you next time. Peace.